Hey, everybody, welcome back to Build It with Tim. On today's episode, we're talking about funnels and pipelines and how we can move data through various stages of a workflow or a process. So, whether that's some sort of sales data, customer data, whether you have leads and contacts and customers and you're trying to move them through different stages, or maybe it's like an order process where an order comes in, there's an initial intake, then there's a processing, a packed, a shipped, a delivered status. The goal here is to move data through stages in order to optimize your workflow and your business practices. Right, so the goal here is actually really simple. We have a group of records right now that we're calling contacts, just a general term for sales data of people who our company or our organization has made contact with, and we need to then move them through a particular stage. Okay, now the stages that we have are defined within a Tadabase option field. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the builder and we'll talk about option fields for just a minute here. Inside my data table, I have a field created that I've called status. And this is defined as a radio field, meaning a single select. Okay, so I can select one of the three options that I have. If I need to make more options, I can simply click the plus icon, or I can head over to the quick edit function here and change things in batch. All right, but the point is I have three different kind of options or stages that define what a contact, what their life cycle looks like as a contact. Okay, when a record is created, or somebody, we make contact with somebody, or somebody makes contact with us, right, in this fictional organization, um, they are first defined as a contact. Okay, then they can become a lead. Hey, this person might actually be interested in purchasing our services. Let's convert them to a lead. Okay, now ideally, that person then becomes a customer. So, as the final stage of a customer lifecycle or a contact lifecycle, they become a customer. Okay, these are the stages that we want to move this particular person or this piece of data through inside of our actual business process or our workflow. Okay, so this is purely just the data side of things. Okay, we have these records, we can change these options. Okay, but when we're actually building out a workflow or an application, we can do some more creative things inside of the page builder that allow us to actually set up these funnels or these pipelines so that our end users of the application can efficiently and effectively work through our process and change the statuses and make sure that everybody is on the same page within the organization about what data lives where. Now, if we switch back to kind of this visual representation of what our end goal is, where we have our data and we have our stages or our option values here that we want to change. And the end goal is to move these pieces of data into the next stage. There's a couple different ways that we can do that or achieve that. I'm going to focus today on primarily action links. Okay. But the different methods inside of Tadabase that you can use, all going to rely around editing or updating records. So for this first method, what I've done is I've created three different pages: contacts, leads, and customers. Okay. And I've placed a table component on each one of these pages, and they are all showing records from the same data table. They're all showing records from our sample data table. The difference here is that the contacts page with the table component on it, I've changed the table component title to contacts, and I filtered the data to only show records where the status is contact. Okay, for the leads page, as you might have guessed, I have filtered the records to only show records where the status is lead. And then customers is only showing records where the status is customer. Okay, by doing this, I've kind of defined different views into the actual raw data that we have stored, to only show me what is relevant for the page that I've actually created. So if I go to the leads page, I don't have anybody with the status of lead, so there's no records to be seen. And same with the customer page. Now, to move these records into the other views, I can simply add an action link to this particular table component, with a specific action defining what should happen when we click the button. Okay, so to add an action link to my table component, I'm going to open the component editor and then choose links and then action link. That's going to create a new column on the table component, which I can then customize and define my particular action rule. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the actual title of the column in the button. So we'll say convert to lead. Here I can define an icon. I can change how it's formatted. So initially it's formatted as a link, but I'm going to change it to a button and I'm going to make it a green color. Okay, now for my action rule, this is where we're actually going to tell Tadabase what do we want to do when somebody clicks this button. And in this case, we're going to say we're going to update the record. So update the contact record. And we're going to set the status to a custom value of lead. Now, the last part of this action rule, I can show a success message for my success behavior. But in this case, what I want to do is redirect to an existing page. And then for my option, I'm going to choose redirect to the leads page. So if we look at what this rule does from the top to the bottom, when the button is clicked, we're going to update the record. We're going to change the status from contact to lead, and then we're going to redirect the user, the end user, to the actual leads page. And I'm going to repeat the same process on the leads page because, again, I have 3 different stages in this particular pipeline or funnel. And I want to guide my end users from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. So right now we're on step 2, which is the leads page. And to get users to step 3, which is the customers page, I need to do the same thing, but just change some of the actual action rules uh, to be slightly different, right? So we're going to add another action link. We're going to say convert to customer, because in this case, we're going from lead to customer. And we'll do the same icon, the same button, the same color. Okay, the only thing that's different is the name of the button. What we're updating the status to, in this case, we're doing it to customer. And we're redirecting to the customer's page. Okay, now that we're all updated and saved, we don't have to do anything on the customers page because this is kind of the end of the road. Okay, we've converted from a contact to a lead, then a lead to a customer, and now this is the end of this particular workflow. We don't have to do anything really on this page. Okay, now if we go back to our live app and refresh, we're going to start on the contacts page. And we can take this first record, David Ross, we can convert them to a lead. Now remember, pressing this button is triggering our action link. And our action link has an action rule that says update the record and then redirect the end user. So by clicking that, we've updated the status, and now you can see I'm on the leads page. Okay. And if I go back to contacts, that person is no longer listed here because these particular components or views are filtered to only show me records with particular statuses. Okay, so if we wanted to continue to push this person through our pipeline, then we can do convert to customer, and now here they are inside the customers view. Right, so that's how we can use action links to update our records with the values that we need in order to push particular pieces of data or records through a pipeline by updating the status and then redirecting the end user to an appropriate page. Now, another method of doing that is actually using an edit form. Okay, so very similar to the action link, this is a little bit more, it's a little bit more robust, but it requires a little bit more effort from the end user. Okay, so rather than using an action link on the table component itself, we can actually add a different link, which is called an edit link. Okay, now this edit link is going to create a dedicated edit form that allows you to edit any field on the record that you want. So by adding the edit form or edit link to the table, I'm going to configure it to show it in a pop-up, and that's going to create a dedicated page that contains a form that lets me edit the record. All right, now I can do a lot of the same functions here that I could with the action link, where in this case, rather than letting people edit any particular field on the record, I only want them to change the status. So I've removed all of the fields and I've added just the status field to the form. And using form rules, I can then go to submit rules and say redirect to an existing page, and I can redirect it to leads. Okay, now the same thing with the leads page here. I can add an edit link. Again, personal preference. I like to show it in a modal pop-up, so I'm going to do that. And then I need to change this form. I'm going to remove all of the fields and then only add the status field. And then using submit rules, we're going to redirect to the customers page. Now this gives us basically the same effect, but you'll see the difference is rather than clicking a single button and having things happen behind the scenes, this requires the end user to actually change the value and it will move them manually. Okay. And now, just to kind of reiterate what we've learned, we've just talked about two of the most basic kind of fundamental building blocks for doing this particular workflow. Okay, and we can use them in different ways than what I've just shown you here. Okay, so when I was using an action link on a table component, that's not necessarily the only option you have, but we can use um, that same technique in other areas. So let's say we have our contacts, and in this case, we have a record detail page, okay, for the particular contact. On that detail page, maybe this is the point where we want to convert them. Okay, so on the contact detail page, maybe we're showing additional information like all of the messages that were sent, or forms of communication, whatever it is. Maybe there's uploads, maybe there's proposals or quotes or whatever it is that kind of pertains to your particular workflow or your business process, but we can still add an action link in other areas. So inside the detail component, we could do the same thing. We could add an action link here that says the same thing, convert to lead, and we can still display it as a button, sorry, rather than a link. And then our action rule can be exactly the same thing. So you're going to find that the action rules and the form rules are going to be consistent throughout the application, which really gives you a lot of flexibility in how you want to build these workflows out, and not be tied to a very specific function. Okay, so here we can do status. We're going to update it to lead, and then we can redirect to that leads page. Okay, so what this looks like now is if we go to our contacts page, we can go to the details page, and then we can, right, there's going to be a whole plethora of information here about this particular contact, but we can then convert them to a lead and will take us to the leads page. And from here, you can repeat that process where you have a lead detail page, which has a whole different set of information on it. And then again, an action link that converts them to a customer. Right, but once we kind of learn these foundational tools, right, the action links and the edit forms with form rules, submit rules, and record rules, everything kind of opens up to you as a someone who's building an application. All right, so that's it for today's episode of Build It with Tim. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.